So here we are. I'm I come before you, and I'm ready to I guess review my Electrum Sabercrafts Aurora. Now, this saber I purchased for myself. Finally, I had wanted one for a while. I had seen reviews by some of my friends on on the YouTube that I subscribe to. They subscribe to me, and I kind of fell in love with this saber. Of all the Sabercraft designs, I have a remnant, and yeah, I wanted to get the Diadium 3, and I wanted a saber that sort of felt like an Obi-Wan Kenobi saber, and this saber most definitely exudes Obi-Wan Kenobi Episode 4 vibe. And because of that, when I purchased this saber, I tried to outfit it with the customizations that I felt would sort of, to that end, make it as close to being Obi-Wan's saber, you know, from A New Hope as I could possibly get. Which is why I went with the light weathering, and I kind of went with a subtle motif. And I'm just more for this video, this review, I plan on just kind of covering the aesthetic attributes of the saber, while sort of glossing over the the electronics and what the saber is sort of meant to do. I'm just going to sort of cover that on the most basic terms, not really focusing too much on functionality, because this is a kind of a a bit of a complex read to be sure. Um, and I'm still, I although I've learned how to do most of the the things that this saber can do, I still have a lot to learn. So I ask for a bit of forgiveness from those that would sort of critique me harshly. Anyway, so starting from this end, you've got your vents, and as I said, this is lightly weathered, and I really think the Electrum Sabercrafts did a masterful job on the weathering. I couldn't be happier with the weathering at all. Now, the saber sort of, the design of it ticks all of the boxes of Obi-Wan's saber, from the sort of kitchen sink knob thingy here to the this section that would normally be a little bit more pronounced in in its makeup. This is a bit more of a subtle design, but it does tick all the boxes. And I'm just gonna not really explain everything, but just let you see it. And I went with the burn copper for the cover deck wheel. Moving to the switch section, you have a profound. It alludes greatly to the graphics that was used in the design of the movie prop. I really, short of saying graphics on it, it definitely is a 100% homage to that. You have the option for the clamp card, as it were. This isn't really so much a clamp card. I mean, this is the main heart of the saber as far as controlling. This is the main interface. So I kind of went more subtle. You can choose different color versions of this. I went with black, and then I went with these. I guess I'm not exactly sure, like a gray steel or a steel kind of color for the screws. You can change the color for your screws on the saber, and I went with a white ion for the clamp card. And the way that you can select rather the LEDs. There's 3 LEDs in here. 1, 2, 3. Each one kind of controls a different aspect of the saber's feature. I went with I believe I have green, amber, red. Green because that turns the saber on. Amber because it's kind of a neutral color, and red turns the saber off. I'm a pretty simple guy, so I kind of figured I'd need help with that, but it seemed logical to me, so that's why I sort of went with that. Uh, these lines that and these little these are actual um, cutouts in the design, kind of lock down that that Graphics clamp card sort of aspect. And moving down the Saber, you have your grenade section. Now, I don't know if everybody knows why this is called a grenade section. Uh, because in the original movie design for everybody probably knows this. I'm not assuming that you don't, but um, just to clarify, when the prop makers back in 1977, well, 1975, 76, were looking for, inspiration to create a lightsaber. They just kind of found all the parts were found, and the reason why this is called a grenade section is because it was actually made out of a grenade, not a live grenade. They're not going to hand a live grenade to Sir Alec Guinness and say, "Here, play with this." No, it was obviously a defunct grenade, but they figured that at the design aspects of that they needed, the aesthetics that they were looking for. So yeah, that's what they went with as part of the design. Yeah. Anyway, so there's kind of a bit of a knurling on here. It doesn't really add too much to the texture of it. It's just sort of a visual thing. You can feel it a little bit, but it's very subtle. I've heard people complaining that the grenade section is a little bit rough in the hand, but I find that as far as points where you hold this saber, it's one of the more one of the more comfortable and least hazardous to your appendages, and it's quite nice. I like the weathering that they did. It's interesting because in certain instances the weathering on the grooves themselves is a little bit inconsistent. Like, there's less weathering here, and then there's more weathering on the other ones, and then of course they sort of burnish off the edges, and I don't know, they did a remarkable job. Moving on to the end of the saber, the emitter end is where things start getting a little bit uncomfortable. Although aesthetically pleasing, thin neck sabers traditionally to me are some of the least comfortable sabers to have in your hand and to wield. Without paying a cost in comfort. This saber is no exception. Everything's kind of fine right up until when you get to these things, and these edges are a little bit pointy. It does hurt to do what I'm doing, but I'm a sadist. Well, not a sadist, but I'm a little bit of a masochist, so I don't really mind pain too much. But so you got this lovely weathered thin neck section. This is very durable. This saber is really suited to dueling. This thing's I have noticed nary a bit of play in this. This is very solidly put together, and I think this could probably handle the most abusive of dueling. So going back to these cutouts, this is a nice aesthetic design. I really like this. I view this saber as basically just a sort of highly stylized version of Obi-Wan's saber. Sort of, if the way I think about it is, if someone to do, if there was like a conceptual drawing or multiple conceptual drawings of Obi-Wan's saber, the design before they settled on what they settled on, if that was part of the process rather than just sort of arbitrarily throwing pieces together, if there was more like a consensual aspect, or if someone were to kind of create like an alternate timeline where the saber might be a little bit more futuristic than what it already was. Don't go away. Okay, that always happens to me. This is what you would get anyway. So again, observe all the weathering. This is I selected the color for this screw here, which is the same on the other side, and I went with a kind of a burnt copper for this little greeble here. This screw doesn't really do anything. I sort of pretend like it's like a blade retention screw, but it really isn't. The blade retention screw is actually there. And then you move down to the emitter. Everything. Would you agree with me that the weathering on this thing is just amazing? I'm absolutely smitten with the weathering, and this kind of has like a bit of a, get my hand in there, and it's a little bit of a gold, or rather a copper accent or brass or what have you on the ends there, those little teeth. And I'm not going to take the blade out. Suffice to say, it's a quadcrete LED in there, and the blade depth is only to about that edge right there. So the depth isn't that deep, but the blade, it really takes a bit of work to put the blade in here, because I think the mindset was that in order to compensate for the lack of blade depth. I mean, this is a thin neck. Thin neck sabers don't have much room to work with as far as blade depth goes. So they opted to make this a little bit tighter than average. So you really have to wrench the blade in here. Now, I currently have a Infinity V4 Saberforge blade, a 36-inch blade, which is a little bit too much gun for this particular saber. I'm more of a 32, 34-inch blade, guys. So I actually have a blade coming from the custom saber shop, just a show blade, which will be a little bit more beneficial to wielding this saber. It'll add to the balance of it, because the balance is a little bit off. I would demonstrate that, but I'm not going to. It's a little bit difficult to kind of do both, hold that camera and and try to do that. All right, so as far as turning the saber on, here's where I have to be very careful to avoid upsetting anyone. So the saber is currently in deep sleep mode, and that really helps to conserve power. This does run off of a lithium-ion battery. It's an 18650 standard for most sabers. Unless you're starting to get sabers from China, in which case they use, or Ultra Sabers, they use different batteries. The battery isn't really accessible. The Pommel, and what I was going to do, but I forgot to prepare for it, was I was going to demonstrate how to remove the Pommel and just show you some of the basic things here. Actually, you know what? I'm going to save that for the next video, because I am going to do a two-parter. I don't want to, but I kind of have to. Yeah, so let's just not do that. Suffice to say that this is threaded, and will actually, you can just turn it, and it comes off, and it reveals the chassis, and there's componential things in there that sort of need to be elaborated on, but that'll happen in the second video. Previous iterations of Ultra Sabers, my Remnant, for instance, which has a Diadium 2, which is an older saber, actually has a retention screw that you remove, and this just slides off. But this actually screws on, which is much better. And as you can see, once you get that on there, the alignment is such that it's pretty accurate. So it's threaded properly for alignment's sake, and I really do appreciate that, because a lot of sabers that you get don't necessarily align, which is kind of interesting, because the emitter, for some reason, if you look at that part, it doesn't really line up with the rest of the saber, and that's kind of unfortunate. And I don't know why that is. It almost seems like, I don't know. It almost seems like the switch section is kind of not in alignment with this, and I don't know. Anyway, whatever. I'm not organizing my thoughts very well, so forgive me on that. But anyway, to boot up the saber, you hold the middle, and then you see the lights activate, and then you wait for the boot up sound. And you get your boot up sound. And now you can turn the saber on by holding this. Now, I currently have a profile set up here that utilizes smooth swing. And I went with kind of a fuchsia color. It has a subtle flicker, not too grandiose, and I have it set to lockup. So it's a manual lockup. So this one currently isn't currently set to blaster block. You can adjust it so that pushing this button will give you a blaster block, and it has kind of an auto lockup feature, which is kind of nice. Essentially, what happens is, let me turn that off. With the auto lockup, when you strike something, if you continue to apply pressure, there's a sensor in here that sort of recognizes that there's continual pressure, and it'll initiate the auto lockup. So that's kind of a nice feature. This also has a stab, which I'll try to demonstrate. And what the stab feature does is it just sort of activates one of the swing or clash sounds kind of at random. Although that's not true. I mean, I looked through the fonts. There are several fonts loaded on here, and the fonts do actually have a stab. And I guess that even though they sound like either a clash or a swing at random, they are indeed dedicated stab sounds, but they don't really sound like it. I don't know what a stab sound would actually sound like other than, you know. But they are distinct in some regards. So let me demonstrate again. So as far as turning the saber on, that's on. And then to turn it off, you hold that. Now, you can control the intervals for how long you hold this to turn on and off. So for on, it's a little bit shorter than off. I have off set to, a few milliseconds more, just so you don't actually turn the saber on and off. Now, in theory, there's supposed to be a way to set it to more of a slide, like you would slide it here, or you'd slide it here to turn it off and on, like on a diadium 2. But so far, I haven't figured out how to actually do that. But that's okay, because that's actually functions quite well, as is. Now, one of the things that this saber can do is it can take your fonts and convert them into smooth swing to interesting effect. It's not as gratifying a finished product. It's not as refined as, say, what you'd find on a Profi board or CFX, but I find that it works quite well for what it is. So let me demonstrate. That's about the extent of it. And of course you do have clash. I have the sensitivity on the clash up to about 8, which seems to give me the best responsiveness. And of course the lockup. I don't remember which font this is. I think it might be Faircron. Got about 8 profiles on here now. And for the sounds themselves, you can adjust different aspects of the you can control the decibel levels on the high, medium, and low ends, rather the bass and the mid range and the treble to kind of your desired effect, which I've done. I don't like the sounds to be too trebly, and I find that adding the mid range, it really kind of hurts my ears. So I kind of stick to adjusting the bass levels to get the results that I want. So I find that as far as manipulating the individual fonts, I'm sort of limited as to what tonally I can kind of accept without being too. I just don't like having my ears hurt by piercing sounds. And this is currently only equipped with fonts from the Electrum Sabercrafts site. This came with a font called it came with Firkrin, and I installed a Seagull, and then I took all of the fonts off of my Diadium 2 and transferred them to this Saber. So I currently have about 8 of them, I think, and they've all been converted to Smooth Swing. I still have a couple of them that need to be converted into profiles, and yeah, so they're all kind of very, very similar. All the fonts are kind of similar, and some of them are kind of a little bit too annoying to use. And others, like Mantle of the Force and Heart of the Guardian, are pretty decent stalwarts that obviously I've used for my some of my Jedi fonts and whatnot. And of course, they give more Sith fonts. Like Fury and Fire and whatnot work better for Sith fonts. But I'm not going to go through all the profiles just yet. That'll be for another video. I'll go through all the various and sundry features here. I'll show you what's inside the chassis and give you kind of a general idea of how to how to program this stuff to the best of my knowledge. Anyway, so let's give you sort of the visual, the final visual tour here from one end to the other. Not that you haven't seen it already, but something I usually do on my videos. I could kind of simulate elevator music if you want. Sorry if I'm having a difficult time speaking. I'm a little blurry-eyed. I went and saw Rise of the Skywalker for the second time, and the second viewing was better. Going and seeing the movie without the without being wide-eyed and sort of staring at the screen going, oh, what's going on? I was able to sort of focus more on the nuance of the movie, and I realized, this is kind of like a pseudo review of Rise of Skywalker. I noticed that I really think that J.J. Abrams did a masterful job sort of reconciling some of the issues from The Last Jedi that a lot of people didn't like. And it's a very, very, there's like very little fat on that movie. It's a very entertaining movie from beginning to end. I didn't find myself getting bored. I was actually just sort of able to immerse myself into the experience of that movie, and I rather enjoy it. I'd say that it was one of the happiest movie-going experiences that I've had in a long time. And to boot, the people that were sitting around me weren't laughing through the whole thing. So it's a real boon when someone doesn't find the movie that you take serious and kind of love as just absurdly hilarious and laugh through the whole thing. So be cognizant of how you behave in the theater. It does affect other people's enjoyment of things. So try not to be an a-hole and go to these things and try to, like as I said, respect people. So, don't talk too much. Don't crinkle things too much. Just be polite. Just act as you would hope the other people would act. You follow? Do we reach each other? And I wasn't trying for a PSA, but it just kind of happened. So anyway, yeah, there it is. Finally, I reviewed, or mostly reviewed, a partial review, I guess, my Electrum Sabercrafts Aurora. So here it is. This is my Christmas present to myself. And this is the thing that's keeping me from buying, currently keeping me from buying an actual like movie accurate Obi-Wan saber from A New Hope. Eventually, I will get one, but for now, this will have to do because I'm trying to save some money. I will still be buying sabers, but I'll be doing them a little bit on the cheap. Uh, it's a new year, and I need to be more responsible. At any rate, well, I hope you liked looking at my Aurora here, and I hope you like my review. Uh, and I'll leave you with this. You'll look at some fuchsia, and yeah, that's pretty much it for this review. Hope you enjoyed it, and until next time. No, I'm not gonna do that too. Oh, that's mind bending right there. Anyway, my love to you all. I hope everyone has a happy new year, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.